Good morning here from Palm Springs, California. Valerie Milano, the senior editor of the Hollywood Times and Aspiring magazine, and I'm so happy to have our guests here today. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. My name is Noah Dixon. I am one of the co-directors for our film, The Bulldogs, and we are based in Columbus, Ohio.
Great.
Yeah. And yeah, thanks for having us. I'm Ori Segev, also one of the co-directors and the director of photography for the Bulldogs. And yeah, excited to be here.
All right. Thank you both. And Ori, I just want to ask you, just make sure you have your voice turned up, your sound. You just sound a little low. So
Oh,
just make
okay.
sure you're all the
How's
way
this?
up. That'd be great. Thank you. All right. All right. So we're discussing the Bulldogs that's going to be at Slamdance in Los Angeles on February 20th and the 22nd. And so the film begins after the camera leaves. What was the moment when you realized that not the derailment itself, the train, not the derailment itself was the real story you needed to tell?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we completely knew that from the beginning. Like I said, we have both lived and worked in Columbus for years, and when this happened, it was a big story everywhere, but definitely in Ohio, it was a really kind of scary thing, and it was in the news. And Ori and I have worked together for years, and primarily focused on telling stories that are rooted in Ohio and the Midwest. So we were interested in following because it was close to home. Um, but while we were talking about it, we kind of knew early on that this kind of thing unfortunately happens and is very common. Where the news cameras will cover the story, but then after a couple weeks leave and move on to something else. And we had a lot of conversations about, just because this had happened in our state, and why don't we go visit, get to know residents, and see if there's maybe a story that we can tell after that. So that's how it started. And, we were pretty quickly surprised at just how welcoming the community was and how easy it was to really talk to people and find that their lives are much more complex than, just the quick kind of news bites that you would get, right after the derailment happened.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that quickly. I mean, I think honestly, like as we were meeting the subjects, like we knew pretty instantly. Like the first time we met Barb, who's a podcaster, has an adult fitness class, like, this really vibrant person, we kept wanting to check in with her, kept wanting to film with her, as well as all the other residents. So it just kind of happened naturally.
Okay, thank you. You follow residents through an entire year in moments both ordinary and raw. How did you earn the trust of a community that had already been overwhelmed by media and politicians and outside narratives?
I mean, I was kind of thinking about this earlier today, like expecting a question like this. And, I think it was really important for us, for people to just see us around, So, we ate at the diner in town. We were at the football games. We were just there. And I think that, like, over time, people just, hey, they're sticking around. Like, they're here every other weekend. We've seen those people. And you just kind of gain trust that way. And when, we're filming with the football team, it's like easy to go talk to the band because, we kind of already gained that trust. And, it's kind of the approach that we took.
Yeah.
Yeah, we took a lot of time. I mean, again, because we knew we'd be there for a long time, that, we didn't, it's not like we always had the cameras out. I think that also, the style in which we filmed, it wasn't, it was more observational and not as obtrusive, depending on, there are different kind of setups that were, required more and less. But I think overall, it took some time, but like I said, we were surprised at just kind of how welcoming the community was and how easy it was to get to know everybody pretty quickly.
Yeah, and if somebody didn't want to talk to us, usually they would say, "Well, do you know this person or this person? Maybe you want to talk to them." Really, really welcoming community.
That's good to hear. I want to talk a little bit about the human scale versus the national spotlight. East Palestine, And I've told some friends about watching this film, and we call it East Palestine because it's not Palestine, and y'all talk about this in the film a lot. So East Palestine suddenly became a national headline, visited by the EPA, politicians, and even Donald Trump, and then just as quickly faded from the news cycle. What did it feel like to witness that whiplash from the inside?
It was, I mean, like I said, I think we expected it a little bit, but it was hard. It was difficult, because you really we got to care for a lot of these residents and a lot of, people that we actually weren't able to include in the film, when you edit it, there's a lot more people that we built relationships and talked to. So it was difficult. And I think the hardest thing actually wasn't even the whiplash of them leaving. It was kind of watching this community that was so tight. There were divisions and split. It was, everybody was trying to figure out how they were responding or going to respond or planning to respond, whether that meant leaving, whether that meant fighting, whether that meant accepting it, whether that meant looking at it with a sense of humor. There's so many different kind of ways in which you saw that response. And I think that that at times was difficult, but at times also really, really kind of beautiful and inspirational.
Um, the characters as a community, from a chiropractor turned activist to a retired pizza shop owner and a former football star, the people in the Bulldogs feel deeply representative. Did these individuals emerge organically, or were you consciously looking for voices that reflected different fault lines within the town?
I would say pretty organically. Feel free to hop in. No, I think it's just like when you stop and talk to people, you just realize like Koza, the pizza shop guy. We were just driving, had gone down a road that we hadn't passed by, saw the pizza shop, saw this guy sitting outside with his friend on their rocking chairs. We're like, all right, well let's talk to him, and we don't know anything about him, and like within a second he's like, oh, you got to come inside and see this, and we didn't even have the camera at that point. Like we were just talking to people, so we were like, hey, we got to come back and like, we'll film this. But he was just so welcoming and like wanting to talk to us, and I think he's really like, there's a photo in the film, and he, you can tell how proud he is of like that moment. um
Yeah, nice. Everyday life is as resistance. The film spends time on Friday night football, Christmas concerts, and mushroom hunting moments that could seem small against an environmental disaster. Why was it important to anchor the story in these everyday rituals? And what do they reveal about resilience in rural America?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways we knew that the other stories were being told. There were so many journalists there, there was so much media coverage, and um, for us, it didn't necessarily feel like that was our voice to kind of add to that. Ori and I, our background is kind of primarily in narrative filmmaking. This is our first feature-length documentary. So as we were meeting with residents and thinking about how we wanted to make the film, we were very conscious of what our voice felt like and what we wanted that to look like. So I think that, creatively we decided that, we wanted it to be observational. We thought that, by not focusing so much on the train derailment itself and focusing on, letting audiences to get to know the people, that would have kind of a different impact on the whole event. And I think that, again, like I said, we were at times figuring it out along the way, but from the beginning, we also kind of knew that we wanted to take a different approach creatively because of that.
Yeah, and I feel like, there's so many like different stories to tell. Like obviously like there's health implications, and I don't think that we'll know like the total truth of all of that. Could take a long time to figure out what that impact is. And I feel like by the telling the story in this more nuanced way and kind of focusing on like what are like the immediate struggles within like a year after, and also for the actual viewer, I feel like it's harder to just say, oh, here's the town and this is what it's like, and have somebody tell you that we really wanted the viewer to like experience that and sit there, and it's kind of created the rhythm of the film where it's like, all right, we're going to a football game on Friday and we're going to kind of be there for a little bit and then we're going to go back to K's and, be with someone as they're getting their hair cut and it's, 3 months later. And I feel like by doing that, it feels a little bit more like you're there and experiencing it versus maybe just being told, hey, this is what it's like there.
Finally, after living with this story for a year and then shaping it into a feature, has making the Bulldogs changed how you think about accountability, community, or the role of documentary filmmaking itself?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you can go first, Tori.
Well, I'd say I think this was one of the first times, at least like as a filmmaker, where like, we're nearby. We were, interested in the story, and I feel like just from an approach, like this was one of those things where it's like we just got up and went, and like you never know what kind of story you're gonna tell. I think we were like naive. We were just like, we have a camera, we could go there, we can meet people, we can talk, and I feel like so for me that was like, oh, this is a moment where we just went and did it. And I don't know if that answers your whole question, but that kind of changed my perspective of how to like approach filmmaking a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. It felt like a really nice lesson in empathy and getting the different perspectives. I think I went in with the kind of core beliefs that, unfortunately, I feel like Americans often, suffer as a result of corporate greed and politics. And I don't know if that feeling has changed at all, but I do think that the way in which we worked on this made me understand that there's nuance to every kind of situation, and that by hearing, different perspectives, it kind of, I feel like I've grown as a person as a result of it.
Well, thank you, Ori. Thank you, Noah, for this film. And we will be seeing it, promoting it for Slam Dance. Can you tell our viewers and our readers how can they find out more about the film and about you guys as filmmakers, social media or website or what?
Sure. Yeah, we have a company called Loose Films, and our Instagram is Loose Films. That's kind of where we post most of our social media. So we'll be sharing about it there. There is a website for the film, thebulldogs.com. Is that Ori right?
Well, the
Thebulldogs.com.
Bulldogs film.
Thebulldogsfilm.com.
Um,
But yeah, I would say mostly social media will be kind of sharing about it, and are excited to finally be able to share it with people.
yeah, and then on the Eventive for Slam Dance, you can get tickets, and there's more info about the film as well.
Yay. Okay. Thank you both again for your time. And we will be having the dates and all the ticket information on the article. We're the Hollywood Times dot today, hollywoodtimes.net, aspiringmagazine.com, and YouTube channel, the Hollywood Times Official. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And we will see you in Los Angeles.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Thanks
thank
Thank
for
you for
you.
today.
watching.
Nice to meet you.
Right. Bye bye. You too.